Glad you joined us. See Sam's here, Tanya. Great to see you guys. Mariah's here, but we're staring at her sunroof, so she must be traveling. Good morning. And Lauren Christie just joined us. So glad you're here, Lauren.
Good morning.
Good morning. So we are going to go ahead and get started here with today's agent development training. The focus today is going to be on supplemental insurance. And I've got a few things that I want to share before I kind of turn things over to Cav to run point. First of all, I did want to just notate that we are going to continue with our agent development training next week. We're going to be talking about policy reviews next week, and Steve's going to be running point on that with Sandra's assistance. I'm actually going to be on spring break with my family. So it's my oldest daughter's senior spring break. And so we're going to be traveling to Hawaii, actually. So I'm really excited. The kids are super stoked. I think it's going to be a good week, but I'm going to be trying to check out completely next week. So obviously Rachel will be around if you guys need help. Your sales leaders should be in town. Sandra will be here. Sherry will be here. Cav will be here. But Cav and Sandra are going to kind of run point on things for next week. So I wanted to just lead with that. Secondly, I wanted to share an idea. Cav and I talked about this a little bit this morning, and it's just kind of some reinforcement training. So there is a group of 13 agents in our territory that have actually gone through a 12-week course called the Sandler Sales System. And we went through what's called their Essentials course. Sandler, if you're not familiar with it, is really the foundation that both Steve and I have built our businesses on. I originally went through a Sandler sales training class 25 years ago with the company that I was with right before I joined Health Markets. I went through 2 years of their President's Cup, spent time every single week, just entrenched in Sandler. And while it has evolved a little bit, over the last 25 years, a lot of the basic fundamentals remain the same. And so out of those 13 of us that actually went through the Essentials training last year, we started this week. I'm actually paying for those individuals to be engaged in a monthly session that's being hosted by Eric Meyer, who's a Sandler trainer. And we spent yesterday afternoon about an hour and a half with Eric, kind of in our first session. And one of the things that he talked about, which I just really struck me between the eyes, was the whole idea behind Sandler about having a cookbook. And, obviously Eric sets this up way better than I'm going to, but it's the whole idea of, if you're going to be a baker and you're going to bake something that's actually going to taste good at the end, you got to work out of a cookbook. You got to have a recipe that you're working off of. And so Eric said this yesterday. I know we say this in various forms in various ways, but he put this just in this sequence yesterday, and it just really resonated with me. I don't know if it's uniquely different from anything else we've been saying around goals and game plans and performance tracker spreadsheets and maps of life. I mean, that is what comprises a cookbook, right? Many of you have been working on your goals and game plan and your business plan. I know in our Indiana meeting last Friday, many of you who were involved in that got to see from different agents in different phases of their career about what their kind of goals and game plan were and their business plan looks like for this next year and what they're trying to accomplish. I'm actually probably going to share that recording with everybody because I think it was that good. But Eric just simplified this yesterday. And these are, what I would call mastery techniques from Sandler. So, not every access to this type of material until you kind of get into Sandler a little bit. But the first thing that he said is critically important for somebody in a role like we're in a sales role is that you have to have a cookbook. You have to have a game plan. You have to have a map of life. You have to have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish each day, each week, and each month. And you have to build out that plan. So that's kind of the first thing that has to be in place. The second thing is you have to execute that plan. So are you executing on your cookbook to design and to the design that you built, right? I think the performance tracker spreadsheet is a wonderful way to build out what that recipe is going to be in that cookbook. And then, obviously track yourself against it on a weekly basis and share it with those around you who, are pouring into your business and your practice. And then the third thing you've got to think about is, am I reaching out to the right people in the right organizations, utilizing the strategies and what I built into the recipes in my cookbook? And then the fourth thing is, am I saying the right thing at the right time? What really struck me as Eric was going through this yesterday was that so many people focus on number 3 and or number 4 before they have number 1 and number 2 intact, right? And what Eric said that again just very much resonated with me is that if you're executing the activities, if you're doing walk and talks, if you're making the phone dials, if you're doing the outreaches, if you're planting the seeds and doing the farming in the business, you're eventually going to get good at saying the right things at the right time to the right people, right? Because the way you get good at what we do is you execute transactions. But if you don't have number 1 and number 2 intact and in place, 3 and 4 don't matter. And so I would just encourage all of you, if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a cookbook, you need to get on that ASAP. We're now 4 weeks into the new contest year. And if that's not something you've done yet, I would push you, prod you, pressure you, plead with you, almost to the point of begging you to get that piece done so that you can begin executing the plan. So before I move forward, Cav, do you have anything? You didn't know I was going to cover that this morning, but do you have anything to that or any additional context that you picked up from Eric yesterday around this idea?
Yeah, I just, especially being intimately involved with a lot of new reps and being around for so long, I've seen a lot of people come and go in this business. And I would say the reason most people don't make it is because they don't do 1 and 2. It's just that simple. It's behavior. I don't have a plan. I get up every day, I wing it. I'm not intentional about what I'm doing. And therefore, I'm just flying, I'm like one of those things in front of a car wash that are just flopping around. And for most people, they can't sustain that long enough to figure this thing out. And they have to go find something else to do. But on the flip side, the people who do hit the success the quickest are the people that they just from the get-go, they just go out and start making it happen. And I'll use Lauren Christie as an example. She just last summer, she just went out and walk and dropped stuff off over and over and over. And she started to reap the rewards of it. Joel Molder up in Michigan, his whole business turned around when he just started forcing himself to do walk and talks. And it's this whole idea that how I feel doesn't determine how I act. How I act determines how I feel. It's like if you tell yourself you're going to walk into 20 businesses a day, walk into 20 businesses a day, whether you feel like it or not. And that is what develops the habits to where all of a sudden you're going to start coming across the people who need you. You're going to get better at the presentation through time. But if you don't have anybody to talk to and you don't have the discipline to do what needs to be done to generate people to talk to, you're not going to go anywhere. So, Sandra?
Yeah, I so appreciate both what you and Silas have said about have a plan and execute it. And when Lauren developed her plan, when Joel developed his plan, and they actually started executing it, the ball started rolling. We've seen that with also like Kevin McIntyre and a lot of our other agents. They had a plan and they executed. And I think no matter where you're at in your career, we need to keep building a plan each year, right? And so what are we going to do today? What are we going to do next week, next month, this year, and execute?
Yep. And I'd also point out Emily Haskins was on the call. She did a great
Yes.
presentation last week. And everything she took the goals and game plan, which I had sent out, and she went through it in great detail and laid out SMART goals. She laid out timelines. She laid out what she's going to do and when she's going to do it. And so I know from building a plan like that you're going to get where you want to go.
And she's tracking it.
It's this whole idea of living life by design or running your business by design, right? I guarantee, looking around this call, half of you are winging it right now. You're showing up and maybe you're going into an office and maybe you're sitting down, but you don't have a real game plan. You don't have a strategy about how many calls you're going to make, how many leads are coming in, how many walk and talks you're going to do every single day, every single week, every single month. And that's kind of the thing that Eric Meyer went back to is, it has to be daily, weekly, and monthly goals. And then you back into the math to say, okay. And then it's just a matter of how hard are you willing to work to reach the success that you're trying to reach, right? The more you do, the more you get. I mean, that is truly the reality in our business. So I wanted to touch on that. The last thing I want to touch on before we turn things over to Cav is I actually had a call last week with a group of top sales leaders, and some of the sales leaders in that group are at the pinnacle of success in our business. And I'll tell you, many of our teams are blessed to be right there beside them. But I met with 3 of the top 4 sales leaders in the country. I guess I was the 4th, but Daniel Smith, uh, John Jacoby, and Johnny Pineda. And those are gentlemen who have been with the organization for 15 plus years and have built incredible businesses. And I would say something that is unique about those 3 sales leaders is that they have tremendous growth from the agents, new agents on their team every single year, more so than what we do, candidly. And one of the things I just started asking is like, what's the key to success? And John Jacoby said this, and it just, again, really resonated with me. And so I wanted to share it with you. He said the key to success in this business is really simple. You need to get $120 per week of GRIC premium, and everything else will be okay. And that kind of hit home with me yesterday because the end of the month, I was actually helping. I had 2 clients I had to help. One of them, we enrolled them in an AM Better plan, and then I quoted them Critical Guard, Accident Wise, and Vision Dental. They came back and said, we actually have an accident and a critical illness plan with our life insurance agent that we've had for a long time. So we only want the Dental Wise. It was a family of 4. They bought $1,000 benefit on the Dental Wise, and the monthly premium on that was $139. So I kind of backed into the math that Jacoby had laid out there and said, okay, will somebody really be okay in this business if they're figuring out how to sell $120 a week of GRIC premium, Golden Rule premium, that's United Health One? Does everything else really fall into place for them? And so I backed into the math and I pulled some numbers just to show you guys some things. Now, I'll tell you, all of these numbers I pulled are tier 1. They're not tier 2, or the commission levels go up if you get to those particular levels. But if you look at this, the accident-wise product, which is probably our premier accident product, is 23% first year commission for 10,000 in benefit and 27% first year commission for 15 and 20,000. Critical Guard is 27% or 34%, depending on whether you're selling under 25,000 or over $25,000 of benefit. And then the Dental Wise Max, regardless of the benefit level, is at 27%. So you start looking at these commissions, it's kind of a blended average on these 3 products of about 25%. Can we agree on that? 25% first year commissions. And so what I did is I kind of to certain $20 in monthly GRIC premium per week. That's what I did yesterday in one Dental Wise Max sale, right? That was 139, so it was actually more than this. But $120 in monthly GRIC premium. If you take that $120 a month times 12 months, that is 1,440 in annual volume, monthly premium times 12. So that's what the customer is going to pay over the course of the year. If you take that 1,440 of annual volume and you multiply it times the 25% commission rate that you're going to be paid, that actually falls out to about $360 in first year commissions. So getting $120 a month is going to give you about $360 in first year commissions off that one sale, assuming they keep that policy for 12 months. Then you have residual and renewal income after that. If you take that 360 of first year commissions and multiply it times the 9-month advance that we all get on GRIC products, that's about $270 in advance per week. So not an enormous amount, but it's about $1,000 a month in advances. If you take the 360 FYCs and multiply them times the weighting of 2.85 to get your FYCR weightings, that equates to just a little over 1,000 FYCRs per week. And if you do that, a little over 1,000 FYCRs per week for your first 52 weeks in the business, you're just over 53,000 FYCRs in your first 12 months, which gets you to tier 2 status in 12 months on just $120 a week of GRIC premium. Now, obviously, as you get better and better at this, you're going to have your ACA premiums. Now, ACA business does not give us FYCRs, but it does give us first year commissions, right? So that's legitimate revenue that's coming in and income that's coming in on top of this. Any life insurance that you sell. And then obviously you're going to get to the point where you're getting not just $120 in monthly premium per week. You're going to get to $240 and then $360, and it's going to continue to climb from there. So you start layering all these on top of each other. Then you get into month 13 and 14 and beyond, and you start getting renewal and residual incomes. You can begin to understand how this actually builds. But I think about it from a new agent perspective. If you want to simplify your business, just go find $100 in monthly GRIC premium per week. This could be a vision product or a couple of them. It could be a critical illness, a lot of different products in our portfolio that you could go out and sell, regardless of whether or not that client purchases, actual health insurance or Medicare benefits from you. So I just wanted to back into the math and show you guys the math because I was curious based on what John had said. But I kind of think I go back to this: get $120 a week at GRIC premium, and everything's going to eventually work itself out, right? Cav, any thoughts on that?
Nope, I'm going to add to that later.
Cool. All right. The floor is yours, my friend.
All right. Can I share?
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you down to 40 minutes.
I'm an airplane. I can go fast or slow. It just all depends. So again, when we talk about the supplemental products, one of the things that I've noticed in years of training and stuff like that, I think a lot of there's a difference between people who sell a lot of subs and people who don't. And I think philosophy-wise is the people that don't sell a lot of supplemental products, their attitude is, I have health insurance and I've got these supplemental products over here. Do you want them? But the people who become successful at selling supplements, they explain the supplements as part of the health insurance solution. Because guys, our appointments are health insurance appointments. And a lot of people, they're like, well, I just got to sell them health insurance and they didn't really want this other stuff. And that's because you didn't do a good job of connecting why they need these things. And so the first thing I'm gonna show you is the why. So when you're going out and showing these products, if you don't believe they need them, you're gonna have a hard time selling them. As a matter of fact, if you don't have these products on yourself, how in the world can you sell this to other people? Now, in the past, people used to say, well, Steve, I can't get this because I have health problems. I don't qualify. That's out the window now because everything's guaranteed issue. We have versions of it. And so your very first customer should be you on a lot of these products that come out because everything we talk about, we need as well. And so I'm just going to kind of give you some background on why these GRIC products are so important. And this article right here is basically what I've built my whole business on. And it's just basically says this is the thing most likely to cause you financial ruin, but few prepare for it. It says more than 1 in 2 bankruptcies are caused by medical problems, either from bills, income loss, or both. Medical issues are the #1 cause of bankruptcies, and it's mostly people who are middle class and have insurance who are filing for bankruptcy. I mean, guys, you've heard me say this over and over and over. I didn't pull that out of the air. It all came from this article that came out a few years ago, and it really hasn't changed. I would actually say it's probably getting a little worse. Okay, so now when it comes to medical bankruptcies, the first thing we cannot do is we cannot solve all medical bankruptcy, but we can drastically reduce it. And that's what our goal should be, is when we meet with people, we should try to reduce their chance of medical. We can't eliminate it, but we can reduce it. And how do you reduce it? You hit the big 4. Now, the first one is cancer. Now, the reason this is so important is according to the American Cancer Society, 3 out of 4 families will deal with cancer in their lifetime. If you live long enough, it's not a matter of if you're going to get cancer, it's almost when. And the reason why now is 75% of all cancers come from our environment, what we eat, what we drink, what we breathe, where we live. And so a lot of people that say, well, I'm not worried about cancer, it doesn't run my family. Well, do you breathe? Do you eat food? Do you ever leave your house and do stuff? Because most cancers now are not tied into family history. It's tied into our environment. And so when we look at that, the thing that Silas and I have grasped for years is this whole idea of when you get sick, there's 2 types of cost. There's the direct cost, doctor bills, hospital charges, medical expenses. That's what health insurance takes care of. But what people are not prepared for are all the things that can come up that insurance doesn't cover. They're called indirect costs. First, the biggest one is lost income and savings. If you're not working, you're not making any money. We all understand that. Living expenses don't go away. If I get cancer, my mortgage company isn't going to say, hey, take a few months off your mortgage payment while you're trying to get better. If you don't make the payment in a few months, what are they doing? They're tacking something on your front door saying foreclosure. Okay. Insurance limitations. Guys, the deductibles, the max out of pockets, are they getting smaller or larger? You know, we have out of network issues because a lot of these plans are gravitating towards HMOs, and I don't think PPOs will ever come back. I think we're going to get more and more focused on HMOs because that's the only way insurance companies can control costs. Maybe it's travel. Maybe I want to go to Chicago. Maybe I want to go to Indianapolis. Maybe I want to go to the University of Michigan. And, you know, if I'm taking my kid to Chicago because they have leukemia, I'm probably not going to drop my kid off and say, hey, call me when you're done. There's hotels, there's all this kind of stuff that comes up. In-home healthcare. Health insurance, Medicare has never covered any of the custodial type stuff. So if you have someone helping cook, clean, get you out of bed, bathe you, it's out of your pocket. Child care. And so when we look at this whole idea of just cancer, most of the costs associated with cancer are not covered by insurance. And I love how Silas puts this is when you get cancer, when you get diagnosed with cancer, the stuff is just starting because it's usually a long drawn out thing that could take a lot of time to get through recovering. Okay. So do you want to add anything to this, Silas, before I move on? Because did I hit it?
You hit it. I don't think there's anything more to add to it. That was good.
Okay.
Hey,
Now,
Cav, one last thought though. There's a
Yeah.
reason why group insurance employers actually offer optional supplemental coverage,
Yeah, I mean, health insurance doesn't cover everything.
and their out of pockets are rising.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, so you know, why do you think you see a duck on TV every time you turn on the TV? I mean, supplemental income protection stuff is growing. Now, the second thing we need to be prepared for is the cardiovascular, the heart attacks, the heart disease, strokes. Again, some of that's tied into family history. Most of it's tied into our environment. And so again, it's the same thing. Now with the cardiovascular, most of the costs fall into the direct costs, but there still are some indirect costs that you may need to deal with. And then finally, there's the accidental injuries. That can happen to anybody, anytime, anywhere. And as you can see here, most of the costs associated with accidents are not covered by insurance. And so as we just look at this and think about this for a second, showing people a critical guard, showing people an accident wise or an accident expense plan, there's a very real need for this besides just helping them cover their deductible. Matter of fact, you're going to see when I talk about this, I hardly talk about their deductible at all. And I'm going to tell you why in a second. But are there any questions on this before I move on?
Nothing in
Anything in the
the
chat?
chat.
Okay. So obviously this session is called Design the Plan Supplemental Products. And again, guys, as I go through this, again, I'm going to put this disclaimer in there. I'm going to show you a way to do some of this stuff. It's not the way. I'm going to show you products that I think are important. If you think other products are important, do what you need to do, okay? But again, I'm just kind of showing you an example because I have routinely been one of the top sales agents on the team for 20 years, okay? It's always been ingrained in my business that these supplemental products are actually more important than the health insurance in some cases. And here's why. Some of you know the story of my Uncle David. Several years ago, my uncle got cancer or got a sore throat, went to the doctor, thought he had strep throat. It turned out to be throat cancer. He battled it for 4 months. He did go into remission, but it took 2 months of treatment, and it took 2 months to recover from the treatment. And so my uncle's bills were well in excess of 6 figures, and his health insurance covered virtually all of it. But I watched him lose his house, his car, his marriage, everything, because he couldn't work for 4 months. And I had products I could have sold him for 30, 40, 50 bucks a month that would have changed his world. And I never even talked to him about it because he had such good group insurance. And I made a decision at that point, I'm never going to do that to another human being again. If I get the opportunity to talk to somebody, I'm going to do what Tony Letcher says. I'm going to show them. I'm just going to show them. I'm going to let them know they're still exposed. I'm going to let them cover the exposure. My job is to show it. Their job is to decide what they want. Okay. I'm not going to sit there and try and figure out their budget for them. I'm going to show them. They can design it how they see fit. Now, the other thing that has really helped me be successful selling SUPs is what I learned from Sandler back in 1998, which is called the pain funnel. And the pain funnel is just a process that you can use on people to get them emotionally involved. Because here's what most sales reps do. They tell people why they need these products. They don't create a situation where the customer tells themselves why they need these products. And so the pain funnel, again, is taking someone who is well. Someone who is well is, in our world, is all I need is health insurance and I'm fine. We have to take those people and we have to make them sick. Now, when we make someone sick, they can see there might be a problem. They don't know if they have a problem, but they could see where that's a problem for someone else. Once we make them sick, now we make them critical by making the problem specific to their situation, where they realize, wait a second, I do have a problem and I need help. And then we perform the miracle by showing them the products that'll solve their problems, and they've been saved. So I'm just going to give you a quick little overview of how I do that, because it's very, very simple. I just ask them a couple of questions. So if you remember from last week, when we talked about the health insurance, I like to present, a bronze, a silver, and a gold. Or if they want an HSA, I'll do the HSA plan. But one of the things I do to transition into the SUPs, and I love talking about the SUPs after I talk about the health insurance, because now I can start poking holes into the health insurance. And so the very first thing I'll say is, now, before you decide which plan you want, I need to tell you the two things that none of these plans will cover. So that's how I take someone from well to sick. Before you decide if you want a bronze, a silver, or gold, I need to show you the two things that none of these plans are going to cover. Now, the first one is the max out of pocket, because that's going to become very real when you get sick. And as you can see here, we're looking anywhere from $8,000 to $9,000. Is that going to become real when they get sick? If you have an HSA, it's $7,200. And so that's the first thing these plans aren't going to cover, is it's not going to cover your max out of pocket. Now, the second thing these plans will not cover is your monthly bills. And here's how I make them critical. The reason that's important is when we did the fact finder, you told me that you didn't have any income protection. If you guys remember when we talked about the fact finder, I just like to ask them, hey, look, do you have disability, AFLAC, anything like that? No? Okay. Well, the reason that you need to know this doesn't pay your monthly bills is because you told me a few minutes ago you didn't have any income protection. And then I just ask a simple question. So if you were in an accident or got cancer and couldn't work for 1 or 2 months, what would that do to your family financially? And then I shut up. And here's the answer I get most of the time. It would devastate us. We'd go bankrupt. I don't know what we would do. Guys, it doesn't matter. Whatever answer they give me, it's not a good answer. And as soon as I get their answer that's not good, I just simply ask them, are you comfortable with that? Because how many people are comfortable with it would devastate us? How many people are comfortable with, I don't know what I would do? And that gets people emotionally attached to this problem now because they're thinking about what they would do. And then if they say, I'm not comfortable with my current situation, then here's some plans you should consider. And then I go into the GRIC products. Now, some people might say, well, I have money in savings. I love those people. And here's why I love those people. If you have money in savings, you can afford the premium I'm about ready to show you. I talked to a lot of new reps. Well, they got money in savings. They didn't need this stuff. You're missing the whole point. If someone tells you they have money, they can afford the premium. You just need to be able to present it in a way where they're going to want to spend their money on the products. And so the one thing I'll ask is, how much of your savings are you comfortable losing to an illness or injury? And I will tell you, most of the time people will say, I don't want to lose any of it. Okay, then here's some plans you should consider. But every once in a while, someone will say, well, if I have to pay $9,200, I can pull that on my savings. And I'll immediately double the number. Well, what if you need 20,000? And do you even really want to pull out the 10? No. Okay, then here's some plans you should consider. Probably the largest one I did is I was meeting with a guy. He's retired, single guy, and he made it very clear to me that he was very good with his money and he had a lot of it. Because obviously we talked about the ACA and I needed to know his income, and he was telling me about all this stuff. So when I got to this question, I said, look, if this situation happened to you, how much of your savings are you comfortable losing? He goes, 100,000. I said, what if you need 200,000? And do you even want to lose the 100? He's like, no, not really. So I showed him the plans and I walked out with a $150 premium. Because I don't get scared away by people with money. Those people you need to let them know why they should spend their money on these products, because who wouldn't want to spend a small premium to transfer the risk to an insurance company for tax-free money versus pulling it out of a 401k that's going to be taxed? And that's only going to be taxed if you're under 59 and a half, you're going to be penalized. And oh, by the way, I just showed you a plan that had a $600 a month subsidy. You may have to pay some or all that back. So guys, for the people with money, especially if they qualify for a subsidy, pulling money out of their account is the worst thing they could do. You just got to let them know that because they don't realize it. So that's if they have their income from a job. Now, if they have fixed income, we talk to a lot of people, they're 62, 63, they're kind of in that black hole between employment and Medicare, and they're retired. They've got their pension, maybe Social Security, they're living on investments. The question's just a little different. If you were in an accident or cancer and your expenses exceeded your income, what would that do to your family financially? And then all the answers are the same. So guys, it really just comes down to, I can sit there and show this to people, and the only thing I need to know is, how do you get your money? Is it from a job or is it fixed income, pension, Social Security? Maybe they're a landlord. They got a bunch of passive income coming in because of their business. And it just determines, what are you going to do if this happens? And then I can move into these products. So does anyone have any questions on these questions? Or Silas, Sandra, do you guys have anything to add?
No questions, Steve.
Okay. All right. So then this is how I performed the miracle. I have quote sheets pre-printed before I go on my appointment, or if I'm doing it virtually, I have PDFs already ready to go. Because here's the other thing too that I found with new people. They don't have a process for what they want to show. You know, like we talked about having a process for how you want to market your business, you need a cookbook for supplemental products. I mean, what are the products that I want to show people? What are the products that I think are important? How can I weave those into my presentation to help people? What questions can I ask so that these people will want these types of products, or they'll at least consider it. Where most of you go in, you know, even like what Silas said, at least go in planning on showing vision and dental. But you guys kind of go in and you're like, I don't really have a plan, so I just sell the ACA, and you're not getting the cash flow, the FYCRs, and you're really, in my opinion, not helping your customer. Because the people that truly, they don't need you to go get a health plan. They need you to help them protect themselves from medical bankruptcy. And I believe that with all my heart, that again, I have got to show people where they're exposed. I have got to show people how they can fix the exposure. They need to decide whether or not or how much they want. So one of the things that I've started doing is I'm kind of going back to something we used to do years ago. And if I'm talking to someone that's under 60 years old that is healthy, I'm actually presenting the UHC Term Life Safeguard as a critical illness income protection plan that can help pay their monthly bills. So that's one quote sheet I bring in. The second quote sheet is a GRIC quote sheet that is nothing but guaranteed issue products, and I present these as things that can help pay their medical bills. So if I'm talking to someone and I find out that they have health problems and stuff, I'm not going to bring up the safeguard plan. I'm going to go right to the GRIC. But if I have someone who's healthy, I'm going to show them the safeguard, then I'm going to show them the GRIC products and let them design their plan. So this is what my safeguard quote looks like. And the way I explain this plan is I call it medical life insurance. Now, we used to have a plan back in the early 2000s. Silas will remember this. It was basically very, very close to this. I think it was called Life Plus. So we would sell the Life Plus plan as a critical illness plan. We'd sell a traditional critical illness, and we'd sell them together. And my team, when I was a sales leader, we were the #1 office in the country selling this Life Plus plan because we called it medical life insurance. Now, the funny thing about it is when I say, hey, this is medical life insurance, have you ever heard of it? Most people look at you and they say, no, but medical life insurance is very basic language. I probably should have heard of it. What is it? Well, it's designed to take care of the medical bills if you pass away unexpectedly. So let's say, for example, you get in a car accident, you don't make it. This is designed to pay the outstanding medical bills because someone's going to have to pay the $9,000 out of pocket. I don't want your family to use the life insurance that they need to live on to cover that. Use this to clean up any medical debt. But over the next 10, 20 years, you have a better chance of having a heart attack, cancer, stroke, and not dying. And so these plans have living benefits. And how it works is if you get diagnosed with a heart attack, cancer, or stroke, the basic plan is going to give you $15,000. The enhanced plan is going to give you $25,000. The premier plan is going to give you $50,000. So if you had a heart attack, you couldn't work for 3 or 4 months, would 15, 25, or 50,000 help you pay your bills? Yeah, okay. Which one do you want? Do you want the basic, the enhanced, or the premier? And I'll tell you, 99% of the time, they're going to take the basic, which is okay. But that is how I present this. It's just a critical illness plan that has a life insurance component. This isn't designed to send their kids to college. This is designed to clean up any medical bills if something happens and to be as a critical illness policy. This is also the best life insurance for single people because single people aren't going to buy a Transamerica plan. But single people will buy this because they need the income protection, and it does give them some life insurance so someone else doesn't have to clean up their mess. Now, why sell the UHC Safeguard as a critical illness plan? If you sell the critical guard and you sell a $53 premium, a tier 1 agent is going to get $129 and $492. Tier 2 is $155, $592. Tier 3 is $170, $649. Tier 4, $180, $687. Again, no one's gonna Get mad at you if you do that. But if you sell the term life safeguard for the exact same premium, 269 and 1,000, 324 and 1,200, 355 and 1351, and 376, 1432. Guys, if you just sell one safeguard a week at $50, you're going to hit tier 2 in a year. But if you start showing this, you might start selling 2 or 3 of these a week. Because again, what if you're sitting there with a husband and a wife? They each have to get their own separate policy. If I'm dealing with someone that's in their 50s, that 53 may be 90. So I'm just telling you, you can make more money, more FYCRs by using this as a critical illness compared to the critical guard. Now, I'm not saying don't sell the critical guard. I'm just showing you something different, okay? So now my GRIC product, these are all guaranteed issue products. And I've made this super simple because, again, I used to show people 3 different options, good, better, best, all this. Most people are going to take the cheapest one. So for my critical event protection, I have a $10,000 critical guard and I have a $10,000 accident wise. $69 for this family. Now, some of you may look at that and say, well, Steve, I like the accident expense guard. Go ahead. I have just found that the accident expense guard, when you start dealing with families, it becomes too expensive and they end up getting no accident coverage. So I've just gone back to the accident wise and just basically say this has 4 buckets of money. It's a bucket of money for cancer, bucket of money for heart attack and stroke, bucket of money for Alzheimer's, Lou Gehrig's, and if you're hospitalized due to an accident, it's going to pay you 10 grand. This is going to help take care of your max out of pocket. The second thing I talk about is what's called hospital protection, and it's the hospital wise. And I just show people we can get you $1,000 a day up to 10 days. So again, if you remember from our P4L, there's a slide on there that says the average hospital stay is 5.5 days. So again, if you were in the hospital for 5 days and we gave you $5,000, would that help you pay your bills? Okay. And then the dental and vision. Now, I don't do the dental wise max. I actually do the dental wise and the vision wise. And the reason why is because I've had a lot of people lately, they don't want dental, but they want vision. And so I've just separated them. And this is the route I go. But here's the funny thing about this, guys. You'll have people that'll spend $180 on dental and vision, but they won't spend $100 on income protection. How many people are going to lose their house over dental and vision? It doesn't happen, but yet sometimes you got to change people's paradigm because most people think I need health insurance, I need dental and vision because, oh my gosh, dental is expensive. No, getting cancer and not working for 3 months, that's expensive. And so literally what I do is I just go through this with everybody and I let them build their plan. So once people build the plan, this is how I show it. Now, this is why I always show the gold plan, even though I never sell it. Everyone in their mind thinks gold's better than silver and silver's better than bronze. And so when I've got the gold plan there, and for this family, it's $925, I can have the silver plan at $399. I can add a $53 safeguard, a $49 accident wise, and a $20 critical illness or critical guard. Now, Silas, I did not plan this at all. When you add those 3 up, it's $122. I had no idea when I built this that we were going to talk like that. But when you put those 2 together, now all of a sudden the 522, if all I showed was the 522 first, people would say, that's too expensive, I can't afford it. But when you compare this number to that number, it makes that one look a lot more affordable, doesn't it? See, the key to selling is if you want to sell something, compare it to a higher number. So in their mind, if you think the gold plan's the best, would you, if you got cancer, would you rather have this gold plan or would you rather have the silver plan for 522? Okay. But then if I can get people to look at the bronze plan, 267, I add all those things plus the hospital wise. Now I'm at 476. That's cheaper than the silver, and it's a heck of a lot cheaper than the gold. Because guys, if we can get, like we talked about last week, if we can get people geared towards a bronze plan, whether it's a copay plan or an HSA, that's going to free up some premium dollars where we can do this kind of stuff. Okay. So don't go in there talking about, oh, I got to get them the lowest deductible. No. What you want to do is you want to get them the lowest premium. Because if they get cancer, does it really matter what plan they have? They're going to owe 8 to 9 grand. It doesn't matter. The question is, if I can free up some premium, can I get some money that will help pay my max out of pocket? And so when we look at these plans, if you sold the silver plan, again, $122, the advance is $418 and the FYCRs are $1592. Tier 2 is $504 and $1,900. Tier 3, $552 and $2,100. Tier 4, $585 and $2,200 for a $122 premium. Okay? But if I sold the bronze plan, $642, $2,400, $773, $2,900, $847, $3,200, and a tier 4, it's almost $900 advance and $3,400. If you guys will start incorporating a little bit of the term life safeguard, that's what's going to accelerate your FYCRs. It's going to give you more cash flow, but quit selling as a life insurance product and then sell the guaranteed issue stuff for heart attack, cancer, stroke, see if they want the hospitals. If they want dental and vision, great. But I don't talk about dental and vision till we've got the commitment on the income protection. And I actually have people, they'll take a bronze plan and they'll take all the supplements. I mean, I just wrote one the other day. It was $190. And it's just like, yeah, they took everything. But I agree with Silas. If you're sitting there and you're doing live transfers, doing a lot of this stuff may be difficult. So do the ACA, do the vision and dental. But if you're meeting with people face to face, start trying to incorporate a little more of this stuff in here, because this is the stuff that's going to accelerate your cash flow. It's going to accelerate your FYCRs, and it's going to get you to tier 2 quicker. And again, the thing about it, guys, is tier 1 to tier 2 is by far the biggest jump in commission. Okay. So that's where you want to get to as fast as you can. And then as you just do more transactions, if you just do the same thing over and over, what a lot of people say is it took me forever to hit tier 2. But as soon as I hit tier 2, I got to tier 3 so fast. And then a lot of people, it's like putting a little more effort in, tier 4 is right there. I mean, we have more tier 4 agents now than we ever had. And there was a time where we thought, is anybody going to hit tier 4? It's too far out there. Okay. But that is what I have. So Silas, whatever time we have remaining, Sandra, what do you guys have?
I just wanted to congratulate Randy DeVries. We just got a notice that he achieved his agent accelerator milestone in the week 24 by reaching actually 16,000 FYCRs. And he's got really one more week to go in this 24-week period where he'll reach the agent accelerator kicker bonus, which he'll earn an additional $1,000. And that's what, 25,000 FYCR. So congratulations, Randy. You got this. 1 week to go, bud.
So a couple of safeguards and you'll be there.
I also think it's really important, guys, just to back into where you're trying to go and then take bite-sized pieces and figure out what do I have to do each week? how much grit premium do I need to write every single week to get to where I want to get to in the time frame I want to get there? If you can just take, I think this can get overwhelming as a business because there's so many different options, so many different paths. If you focus on ACA, learn the three products with each carrier on your starter pack, and then you leverage an accident policy, a critical illness policy, and a vision dental policy. And maybe throw in, the hospital wise as a fourth option. Just master those products and make sure that you're talking about them every single time. And I will tell you, even as you're taking live transfers and things, one of the topics of conversation that you can have with clients, they may already be set on their health insurance. But I think asking some questions around how they're going to manage the gaps and holes in that health insurance. I think that's a very great question to ask. How are you going to handle the deductible and the out-of-pocket maximum if you need to, if something catastrophic happens? Do you have anything to protect you from lost income? How long could you survive financially if you weren't able to work because of a major accident or a major illness? As an insurance advisor, my job is to point out where your gaps and your holes are and then make recommendations around products that can fill those gaps and those holes. So those are the types of conversations I think you can have in a very non-intrusive way, but in a way that makes clients think a little bit more about how are they going to handle those, out-of-pocket expenses. Gary Boverhoff says this very well. He says the Affordable Care Act made it much more affordable for people to buy insurance, but much less affordable for them to actually use the insurance. And I think that's very, very true. And there's probably a bigger need for the supplemental insurance today than there's ever been previously. I'd also say just making sure, a lot of what you do when you're selling supplemental insurance goes back to your fact-finding experience, right? If you're asking the right questions during your fact finder, you're helping clients self-identify needs that they didn't even know they had. Seth, if I, as your agent, tell you that you have a gap or a hole in your coverage, it's uniquely different than you telling me you have a gap or a hole in your coverage, right? And I think those are just techniques that we can engage in the fact finding process. I think one of the greatest questions on that fact finder is really around, so I don't know a lot about your financial situation, but if you could not work because of a major accident or a major illness, how long can you survive financially if you're not able to work? Get a number from them. You would be surprised if you're asking that question, how many times people are going to say a week or two. Most families don't have an emergency fund. These products allow you to put them in a position where you can create an emergency fund in the moment to help them cover those deductibles and those out of pockets. So I think questions around how long could you survive financially if you weren't able to work? I think questions around, do you have an emergency fund? Do you have a bucket of money set aside for emergencies? Most people don't. And so just letting clients verbalize that before you start telling them more about the details of the gaps and the holes, and then proposing the solutions that we have available in our portfolio. To me, that's the right sequence to get buy-in from consumers as you're kind of working through that process. So,
Silas, can I show
well done today, Ken.
Can I show one more thing?
Yeah.
Because it kind of
Yeah.
ties into the cookbook. Silas, I mean, some of you were on the call when I talked about my goals for this year, and one of my big goal this year is I want to hit 100,000 in life insurance FYCRs. I think the best year I ever had was 85,000, and so this is kind of a big goal because I've never done it. But whenever I make goals, I always focus on one or two products to help me hit that goal. And so when I look at the Term Life Safeguard, if I just hit 75 of these at an average premium of 50, there's my 100,000. That's building a cookbook. I want to do this. So what products can I sell so I can do this? So some of you, if you're like, hey, I want to make $1,500 a month, figure out how many GRIC products, because again, the Term Life Safeguard, it's a GRIC product. So do this, critical, accident-wise, accident expense, doesn't matter. How many GRIC products do I need to sell so that I can pay my bills? How many GRIC products do I need to sell so I can, pay my bills, eat macaroni and cheese? Because as long as you're surviving, you'll stick around long enough to take this to another level. But you got to make sure you're paying your bills first. And most people, if they actually do the math on this, they'll realize, man, I only really need to sell like again, $100 a week in GRIC AV or GRIC premium, and I'm going to be able to pay my bills. I think people think it's going to take a lot more than it really does because they never sit down and really look at the math to see how this is going to work. So that's what I got.
Cool. Great job today, Cav. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap everything up today? I would just say at its core, your success in this business is tied to how well you cross-sell. And so you have to develop techniques around cross-selling. We make a ton of money just being enrollers in health insurance and in Medicare, but you're really not fulfilling your fiduciary responsibility to the clients that have asked for your help if you're not showing them where their gaps and their holes are and cross-selling into supplemental insurance and or life insurance. And so that just has to be a part of your process. If it's not, I'd encourage you to take some time, build it into your process, practice it, review it, be a student of your business, go out and Google what causes medical bankruptcy. Google articles. One of the things that I think Cav led off with, which I 100% agree with, is if you don't believe that this is a real problem for the clients that you're serving, go read, go pull articles, and candidly use those third-party articles to substantiate the need with the clients that you're serving. They don't have to take your word for it. There's plenty of third-party documents out there that can help substantiate the need for the products that we're talking about. And I think, just figuring out how are you going to tell the story in a compelling way to get your clients to take action and make sure that they're protected. I've said this a few times, but me personally, we're approaching $1 million in cancer insurance payouts over the last few years. I think we've got 3 or 4 cancer claims in process right now. And I can tell you, having watched all of these cancer claims pay out and dropping 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, $100,000 cash in somebody's lap when they're diagnosed with cancer, it is a tremendous blessing to every person that receives those payouts. And so I know a lot of you haven't had the opportunity to deliver that kind of money or get that kind of a payout for your clients yet. But once you start seeing what that does for a client, who's in a devastating financial situation because of a recent diagnosis of something like cancer, it'll start to hit home a little bit more. So my biggest encouragement to go sell some GRIC this week. Go see if you can get $120 a premium. That's a good starting point. So with that, we'll wrap things up today. Cav, I appreciate you doing this. Everybody will be back next week with Cav and Sandra running point and everything. If you're traveling for spring break, have a great spring break and reach out if you need something. Take care, everybody.